So, Scarisbrick Hall, Auckland College, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to Theatre, a place that's built for the dream chasers and you guys, your visitors, the guests. Today, I want to do something different. Usually when I do events, I just get into it and when we do things, but I want to do an introduction to who I am. Why is that? Because we've got a special guest today called Ronan Dunne. And I always say this to everybody, if it wasn't for Ronan, then I wouldn't be where I am today. You're probably thinking, what does that mean? So what I've done is I put some pictures on the screen that describe my life and my life story up to now. So the first one on the top left, I started a dance school, and it became one of the fastest growing dance schools in the whole country. How did I do that? Thanks to O2, they funded my idea, and we grew and grew and grew, and we toured the world. We met the Les Twins, we performed for Beyonce and Jay-Z, we did a whole lot of things, and I was really passionate about it. You might see a KFC bucket there. Is anyone wondering what the KFC bucket's about? Yeah? So when I went to university, I really wanted to study dance. But my father said to me, you are not going to be a dancer, you're going to be an accountant. So I said, let's meet in the middle. I'll study business, and we can basically say, fair enough. And he said, okay, that's good. Where do you want to go? I said, Leeds. When I went to Leeds, I hugged my dad goodbye, and he gave me a KFC bucket. And I said, what's this? And he goes, this is your food for the next 2 weeks. Because if I give you money now, you're going to keep coming back and asking for more. So what I did is I met all the students that were coming to university for the first time, and I sold them tickets to the first events at university. In those 2 weeks, I made £4,000. In those £4,000, I built my dance school, and it became, like I said, the biggest in the UK. You see Nike Dance? After finding my passion with dance, I was sponsored by Nike. That led me to coming in High School Musical on the West End. Passion for me has always been dance. It's been about connecting with people, building communities, and basically just networking. One key thing about me, one big lesson about that I've learned through O2, through meeting Ronan, chief storyteller over here, is that you can make friends on the playground. How you speak to people, what you know, and how to communicate is all learned on the playground. When I was in secondary school, I could understand 7 different languages just by speaking to people on the playground. These lessons I took with me to different meetings, to interviews, to just the ordinary conversation with a shopkeeper. I understand that if you guys listen carefully to today's conversation, you might learn some lessons. And then finally, I'd like to do this thing where I like to warm up the crowd. Is it okay if we do something together? Yeah? If everyone puts their right arm up. Yeah? Left one in the middle. Yeah? Cross it over, turn them in, and then link them. Yep, link them like that. Perfect. And, sorry, what's your name? Ava. Just like Ava, make sure your thumbs are interlocked. And together, you should all be able to do this. Right. So, one thing that I've always learned, if you watch closely, if you listen carefully, you will learn lessons in life that some people will never teach you. I brought Ronan today, someone who has mentored and inspired me to come to Scarisbrick Hall to speak to you guys at Auckland College as well, because I believe you are the future leaders of today. If you watch carefully, you will see hidden tricks. Whatever life story you are told, whoever you speak to can change your life. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite to the stage Ronan Dunne.
Thank you.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you so much. Oh.
What happened to the skinny photo of me that was on the wall a minute ago?
You know, I changed it because of, because of what you told me. Ronan, I know I said to you, would you like to give the students a lecture and speak to them directly? And you said, no, I'd rather have a conversation because young people learn better by hearing a conversation. And I said, fair enough, are you sure? Because I will go hard. I don't like to go easy on things. What should the audience know about your younger life that determines the person you are now?
Well, I'll pick up on something that was said in the introduction. If it wasn't different because you were there, it doesn't count. There's no footprint, there's no DNA, there's no fingerprint, there's no anything. So one thing I learned really early is if you're going to turn up, you might as well make the effort to make an impact. And I think that for anything in life is hugely important. And to do that, one of the questions I'd always challenge people, so I have the privilege at this stage of my career to spend quite a lot of time mentoring and giving back. And one of the questions I always ask, and it doesn't matter whether you're 15 or 55, it's the toughest question you'll ever be asked, but it's the most important answer to work out. And the question is, who am I? Right? And I'm a sports nut, and we may end up talking about sport later, but I had the privilege as a kid to be an Arsenal fan. I'm not sure everybody agrees that it's a privilege to be an Arsenal fan when you're a kid, but it is when you grow up and then you sponsor the team, when you're the CEO of O2 and you get to put the logo on the shirt. But Arsene Wenger said to me, he said, give me a kid with attitude and I can train almost everything else. So I would say to you all is working out who you are, what drives you, what motivates you. So if you ask me the question, I'm a 15-year-old curious kid, and I've been getting away with doing that for 46 years. But it's actually true. The thing that interests me is pretty much everything. And the day you stop being curious, you stop learning. The day you stop learning, you stop being engaged. So if there was one thing out of all of this is, if there's something in this conversation that makes you stop and think, well, what about me? What about, how does that affect me? Why would that be relevant to me? You'll be one stage closer to answering the who am I question. And honestly, the who am I question unlocks the door to nearly everything.
A very good answer. And it's something you picked.
See, slightly skinnier, younger man. There you go.
I really like this picture. It's a shame they cut me off in the end. But and there's something about young people. Since knowing you since '02, which is about, for people just to frame this, last I met Ronan was 15 years ago when he traveled to America to start his new job. But even at '02, when I spoke to your employees, they used to say, Ronan's not the CEO, that's our cheerleader.
Chief cheerleader and chief storyteller. But what I said, the day I took over the job, I said to people, my job is to be chief cheerleader and chief storyteller on behalf of the organization, but my commitment is to make each one of you the success you deserve to be. Because the truth is, everything is about team. There's almost nothing that is a solo activity. Everything is about creating team. And yes, the sports analogies we can talk to, but we all start our lives as what is very often called in the work environment, individual contributors. My first job was flipping hamburgers in McDonald's. And guess what? Your individual contribution is to get 16 pieces of meat off the grill in exactly 90 seconds and get them because there's people outside waiting. But you start doing that and then you build from that the ability to coordinate with other people, to help other people to understand how to do things. So you end up going from, it's not what you do, it's to what you make happen. And whether that's the influence on a young kid in your own family where you can give them a wise word, encourage them when they need it, whether it's what happens on the sports field, or whether it's what happens when you get into a work environment and you start to realize that actually you can see slightly more of the picture before it gets colored in, and you can help other people to work out where best they can contribute. And that's why I said I can be the chief cheerleader and chief storyteller, but the commitment would be that I would use that to help people to find themselves in the right spot in the organization that meant that they could flourish and be the success they deserve to be.
Wow. And there's a question that I want to ask as well, because I always noticed that in Slough, where the headquarters for O2 were, you paid very much attention and detail to the customers. Because I noticed as well, I may be dreaming, but there was rooms that were shaped to experience the customer. So you had a mother's room and then you had a young person's room.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
So we did three things in the office, and don't want to put the headmaster under pressure, but the first thing that we did was we built our own building for the first time, because O2 had been part of BT, British Telecom, and so we inherited all these old, tired buildings. So in Slough, we got the chance for the first time ever to build something that would represent the brand. So when the building was completely empty, I went in one evening with the architect, and I said, so where am I going to sit? And they said, well, we have this executive section here. And I said, absolutely not. So the first thing we did was we got rid of the executive section. I said, everybody's going to sit with their team. And so I said, so give me an idea of where the flow is, where the busy places, where the quiet places. And he said, well, we have essentially two buildings that are interconnected by a walkway, and one side of that walkway has the canteen. So he said the busiest place in the building is going to be the other side of that walkway as everybody convenes to go across to have their lunch. So I put my desk, we didn't have offices, I put my desk at the front of the walkway to the canteen, because that way I could manifest the fact that I was an accessible CEO, because people would actually stop when they saw me at my desk, either even just to say hello or to ask a question or whatever. And to the point about the offices, what we did was we created meeting rooms, and the meeting rooms were all themed around one of two things: either public parks somewhere in Europe, and this idea of convening and coming together in the public park, and the second was that we themed them around the insight we had from our marketing teams around the segments that we served. So there was a young family segment, there was a grey occasional segment, there was others. But you could go into those rooms and have your meeting, and you could see all sorts of examples of how our customers in those segments were actually using the technology. Because the big insight at O2, look, everyone in this room has a mobile phone. I don't know whether you're actually supposed to bring them into your classrooms in this school or not. We'll park that topic. Everybody has a mobile phone. But when I first started in 2001, you know, there was basically the technology was for business people and, you know, the middle classes. It hadn't gone mass market. And O2's big insight was people don't buy technology. They buy the experience that technology enables. And that was why our first ad said, it's a world that revolves around you, and O2 will see what you can do. So that whole idea of we wanted to empower you to do what you wanted. So the rooms in the building were created in such a way that it wasn't, oh, this is what we know about the technology in the mobile phone. No, this is what people actually do when you're not looking. The real use cases. We ran a program called Teach Your Mum to Text. And the reason for that was we had a number of instances where, as people adopted mobile phones, they lost contact with the older generation. But the opportunity, we ran a program, Teach Your Mum to Text, where people then felt, oh, it's okay. Rather than mum, you wouldn't understand, all of a sudden, mum could send a message and still be engaged. So my mum got her first mobile phone, sent me a text, and about 90 seconds later, the phone rang. Wow. And so I picked up the phone, and my mum said, I've sent you a text and you didn't answer. So I had to explain the second lesson was, when you send a text, you don't necessarily have to answer straight away. But it was a nice learning experience.
It's good to also hear about different generations, because just you talking then, I just remembered when I first started off, even in the dance world, TikTok and Snapchat, all this wasn't there. Yeah. And actually that leads on to a point, because I want to show a video, because there was a young boy at the time who he went through the Virgin Media pathway for funding young. He was a good friend of mine, and he was, to you guys probably wouldn't remember who he is, but Jamal Edwards to me was the pioneer to teaching young people how to use mobile phones and put it on YouTube. And no, I really like Jamal, and we used to speak, and we spoke before he passed away, and we spoke about how far we've come, and we had a competition where it was like, you're with O2, I'm with Virgin, let's see who can become bigger. So I just want you guys to watch this video, which I think is an amazing video that Google made for Jamal.
My stamina's healthy, so it's music, no more beating shows. Not just in it for the peas and the garden. I'm just a kid who dreams bigger than the rest. Now I'm living them correct here, sitting in the SB, you need a bar and get educated, so it's not the money you make. It's compulsory, some are calling it poetry. SBTV. But you never catch me. Explosion. Don't think I'm a blow against the therapy now. Go faster. Stack peas every day.
Wow. I absolutely love that video. Something about Jamal, that's very interesting. Without Jamal, people don't know this, we wouldn't have found Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
He found Ed Sheeran on the street, pulled out his camcorder, filmed him, and Ed Sheeran became who he is.
Of his era, Jamal was the biggest videographer in Britain. Amazing. We did work with him at O2 after he got money from Richard Branson, but we won't hold that against him. But way ahead of his, absolutely way ahead of his time. Yeah. But a perfect example of, he was somebody who embraced the technology and made it serve him, and he became a storyteller with a new genre through the videography in a way that just wasn't possible previously. Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah, and there's a question also about impact. Jamal was just a small boy from London. What advice would you give young kids today on creating a big impact in such a small location?
So look, there's always a danger of a grey, aging bloke telling other people what to do. But, you know, I sat in rooms like this at different times. So, honestly, I'm going to repeat something I said earlier and build on it. It's not simply what you do, it's what you make happen. Really understand how you can contribute. So many times we end up feeling like we're forced to fit, to comply, to sit in the box the way it's designed. But nothing in the world after you come out of school really works like that. There are no really well-shaped realities. Everything is what you make of it. So I started flipping hamburgers in McDonald's to make a few extra bob. Out of that, I got to meet some people that I never would have met. But I understood a work ethic and I understood a teamship from that job when I was 16 that taught me an awful lot of lessons afterwards. The other thing I would say, again touched on in the introduction, is just purpose and really understanding. I think one of the great things I got out of home and school was a very clear sense of right and wrong. And I don't mean that just simply on a moralistic sense, but just knowing, you know, that it's the right thing to do is very often all you need to be able to go and push on an idea, work on something that's going to be really, really powerful. And the other thing is learning from failure. I know it's, again, easy to say, but so I was a relatively young CEO. I took over in O2 back in 2008, and about 3 years later, we had a catastrophic network failure where about 8 million people lost coverage at the same time.
I think I found that when I was doing my research.
And I basically was waiting to be fired, either by, fired by the public or fired by my chairman. And so in that particular instance, two lessons that come out of that is, if you're doing the right thing, even when you screw up, people will stand by you. So we had 2 satellite transmission trucks. If you've ever seen them at a sports ground, It's where they do the direct uplink from the sports venue so that they broadcast whatever. We had two of those stood outside the office in Slough, and basically they were waiting for the announcement that I'd been fired. That's what they were there for, so they could broadcast live from Slough.
Brutal.
You know, CEO gets dumped. So what I did was, in the moment, I said, well, let's use the opportunity. So I rang the head of Sky, who was somebody I knew, and I said, look, you won't be very happy. I rang you on your landline just in case your phone isn't working. And I said, I'll give my last interview to you guys because you're a customer of ours. And I went on, and it was a lady called Kay Burley who just announced recently that she's retiring after basically 40 years in broadcasting.
Wow.
And the comms team, and this is again learning on your feet, so the comms team, great communications experts, said to me, Ronan, if you're going to go on TV, you've got to know what happened, why did it happen, you're going to have to answer how you make sure it never happens again, and what are you going to do to make it up to all the customers that have been impacted. And I said, 4 very clear questions, small problem, don't know the answer to any of them, and we've run out of time. So I went on live, and Kay started with a fairly challenging question, and it's, if you've ever, any of you done live interviews either in practice training here at school or elsewhere, there's a thing called down the line, where you end up with an earpiece, a camera in front of you, but everybody else is in the studio, so all you see is the square bit of glass in front of you. You get no feedback, you don't know what the body language is, you don't know if people are laughing at you. Really, it's the worst experience in the world. So Kay came on and asked the first question, and I said, look, Kay, before we start, because I knew I'd get no feedback from studio or anything else, I said, look, despite what anyone else is going to attempt to get me to say, the first thing I've got to say is sorry. Because guess what? This should never have happened. I'm embarrassed, and I'm going to say sorry. And I said, the next thing I'm going to say to you is, if you're an O2 customer and you're watching the show today, you want to know what happened. You want to know why did it happen. You want to know how the hell do you make sure that never happens again? And what are you going to do to make it up to me? And I said, those are the 4 things that I and 250 of the best people in the telecoms industry are working on. And she stopped the interview and said, well, that was decent and honest of you. You better go ahead and get that sorted. And an hour later, the network started to come up, and history records I got another 15 years in telecoms. But the point was, we were doing and trying to do the right thing. We had real purpose in the organization. And when social media took off that night, some of our customers showed that they were true fans. They came in and they fought for us. The team in social media were getting abused left, right, and center, like really awful, toxic abuse. And customers came in and said, that's not fair. These guys are great. They try the best. They're the best of all of the networks, whatever. And we ended up winning a social media war that happened for about 36 hours. Wow. Why? Because we always did or tried to do the right thing for our customers. And they recognized in our moment of crisis that things happen, but people know who's always out there fighting for the good guys and girls, and we were. And so we lived to tell the tale. Yeah. And we ended up being the most successful telecoms company in Britain. And that was because we were every single day trying to do the right thing.
In my research as well, I don't know if it's true, so I don't confirm. Was O2 the first company to bring the iPhone?
We did. We had the exclusive on the iPhone for 2 years. We were also the first company in Britain in our sector to get the Carbon Trust standard for our water management, our waste management, and our carbon footprint. We were also the first to deliver through programs like Think Big. We invited people to recycle their phones, and we gave them money that we made through that into our Think Big program. Because our view was always that we were there to enable a generation of people to use the new technology to change their lives. Things like social mobility. We stopped having interviews that required you to submit a CV to make an application to work in it. We did telephone interviews. Because guess what? There's a ton of people who go to schools that don't look like this school who wouldn't believe that they have a single thing to write on a CV. So what happened? They never applied to work for O2. some amazing people who would have been brilliant. So we stopped asking for CVs. We said to them, would you take a 10-minute phone call? Everyone will take a 10-minute phone interview. And guess what? The shape and size, color, look of our organization changed. And we got amazing people who came into the organization. And we stopped doing the things that blocked real social mobility. We stopped doing the things that presumed that we were going to tell a generation of people who knew more about tech. So in 2011, in the UK, we had gone through the crisis. 2008, we had a huge banking crisis around the world. Born, let me tell you. But 2011, 19% of all young people in Britain were unemployed. 19%. Wow. And yet, the level of digital literacy among young people in Britain was higher than the level of digital literacy among employed people in Britain. So we did research and we went out to all the top companies in the country. This is O2. No right to do it whatsoever. All we did was sell bloody mobile phones. So we went out and we said to the top 500 companies in Britain, how are you increasing your digital literacy and your digital skills inside your workplace? And they all said, we all have plans to do it. And we then asked them the question, how many of you have access to jobs for school leavers? Not university graduates, for school leavers. There was one in the top 500 companies in Britain who took school leavers. So we started a program called Go Think Big, and we put work experience of a dozen companies around Britain and put all that work experience in the hands of a young leadership team. And instead of it going, forgive me, some of you will be included in this, to the kids of mum and dad and friends of mum and dad, every single one, 20,000 work experiences were given to kids who knew nobody who was working in an office. Yeah. So sometimes you got to just change the rules.
Yeah, and I think, so Go Think Big. I remember you guys did a regatta where people from different communities can come, yeah, and you get linked with a company, and then you race the boat, and then you meet, yep, the CEOs and executives of the company. I was on Peter Jones's boat.
Oh, right.
From Dragon's Den.
Dragon's Den, Peter Jones, yeah.
And I was just thinking, I crashed the boat, but I was thinking the whole time I was on the boat, I would never be in this opportunity to ever speak to these guys and tell them about my dancing, etc. Why a regatta, though? Why not a football match? Why not?
Well, we did lots of things. So O2, through its sponsorship of the England rugby team, we did Scrum on the Park and Scrum on the Beach, where we brought mums and young kids to go and for the kids to see their heroes. We did it a different way. Instead of going to rugby clubs and going to the pub, we did it in a different way. The idea of putting people in a space where everybody was learning meant that you leveled off between the CEO, because most of those CEOs weren't comfortable in that environment either. So that was the whole idea, is to reset in such a way that everybody was level in those circumstances. Because the work environment that all of you in due course will go into traditionally has been very hierarchical, very structured. But the reality is there'll be some things the day you walk out of this school or walk out of university where you're more aware and more capable than many of the people who are in higher ranks in the organization. So it's the idea of how you organize around problem solving or opportunity management, rather than it's about a hierarchy. So the regatta was about changing the hierarchy and leaving people on a level playing field.
Right. And okay, on that point as well, I've got a very important question, because I want to track back. You spoke about the change in technology. So for young people now, there's obviously the introductions of AI, there's different digital, let's just say, things coming out. So what advice would you give them about the future of work, especially with how quick AI is coming in? Is there any advice you'd give to them?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. And if I had the answer, I'd probably be flying around the world as a guru on the particular topic. Three things I would say to you is, in the last 20 years, we've created many jobs in our economy that have no value add whatsoever. So they've been done with the false intent of creating work, and by so doing, giving people opportunity. But in many instances, the jobs are such that nobody has gotten any value out of them yet. a basic wage, but no reward out of them in any way, shape, or form. So what I think we're going to find is the jobs that are of really low value add and therefore likely to give really low satisfaction to people will end up being automated increasingly. But if we do that right, what we do is we create space, genuine space for creativity, for skill, for expertise, for knowledge, for human touch to be brought back into a lot of things where we've actually lost that. We've become mechanical and machine-like in so many things. You know, O2, I'll go back to it, but its success was around being people-centric, not technology-centric. And I actually believe that smartly done, AI and the machine learning that goes underneath it will create an environment of a renaissance in creativity inside the workplace, a space where a lot more of the skills and talents you have can be brought to bear in a way that barriers to entry to markets and other things will be brought down because you can get things done, the mechanical bits, efficiently. So I'm actually net positive about AI. I think from a governance point of view, there are challenges around protecting copyright, there are challenges around the deep fake environment. I spoke at a youth conference last year where one of the parliamentary representatives from Northern Ireland, a lady called Carla Hunter, had been the subject of a deep fake with sexual content in it to try to attempt to block her from being elected to Parliament, and that was scurrilously distributed during the election in an environment where it was nigh on impossible for her to be able to stop it and be able to respond in the time. So there are challenges out there unquestionably in AI, but I think I would be confident that we'll get the balance of things broadly right, and that actually you will see AI as being tools that you all will use on your terms to help to develop the skills and capabilities you have to make an even more important contribution to community, society, and the economy when you're in the workplace.
Right, and then also one thing I noticed as well when I was doing my research, you spoke a lot about values. You said you're a traditional man, obviously Irish, Catholic background.
Yes.
We've got two different schools in here, Scarisbrick Hall, Auckland College, who I both know have certain values that they adhere to. What's the importance with values, and why should they stick to?
So, look, always a danger that you sound preachy in this. For every opportunity we have in our lives, we have an equal and opposite obligation to ensure that that opportunity is available to others. So I would say to you, in a world where everybody is challenging DE&I, the true equity in life is that why wouldn't you want others to have the same chance and opportunity that you have? That's where values are built. It's not about me, it's about us. And it's about the right for others to have what you would reasonably expect. The right for other people to be treated with the respect and the dignity that you would expect to be treated. And actually, it's not that complicated. Winning in life does not require somebody else to lose. That doesn't mean I'm not competitive. I'm the most competitive person you'll ever meet, but I don't compete against other people. I compete against myself. Am I meeting the God-given opportunities that I have? If any of you ever read the Old Testament, there's a parable called the parable of the talents. And there was a man who had 2 sons, and he gave talents to the 2 sons. One buried the talents in the ground to preserve them and protect them, and the other basically went and pissed the money away and the talents away by traveling all around the Middle East having fun. And when he came back, his dad killed the fatted calf, the most important thing in that community, to have a party and celebrate the son coming back. And the point was, you are given skills and talents, and with them comes the obligation to use them, and use them with purpose for the benefit of all. If you do that, you'll be happy in life. If you don't, honestly, I'm not sure how you be. So instead of the kid who preserved it all and said it's there and I haven't touched it, actually the father celebrated the son who had gone out, used the talents, in some cases wasted them, but at least to try to put them to use. So it sounds a bit old-fashioned, but honestly, everybody has talent. I guarantee you, there's everybody in this room has one or more things that they're uniquely talented at. That is the opportunity to have a real purpose in your life, is to deploy that talent in a way that it has an impact, not just for you, but for the people around you. And honestly, you will have so much fun, because it joins back to where I started. Who am I? Actually being who you are is the most rewarding thing to ever be. And adolescence is growing into the realization of who you actually are. So match that with the talents you've been given, and you are, I promise you, you will have the most amazing future. And it will be different for every single one of you, and you'll measure it differently. Who cares? Despite the fact that I've had what on the face of it looks like a very successful business career, I honestly could not care less. The day I stepped down from the world's biggest telephone company, and I posted on LinkedIn, a lady reached out who had been at Manchester Business School when I did a guest lecture on the MBA course 10 years earlier. And she said, my life was different because I was in the audience that day. I can say without a moment's dishonesty, that's the most important feedback that I've had in my entire career.
Yeah, and I think a story that I can align this with, just because when you're speaking, I was a tennis player before I was a dancer, because my dad was a professional tennis player. The day I told him I wanted to dance, we didn't speak. But then the Haiti disasters happened, and I was training to go to dance with the Royal Ballet in Russia. And I gave away all the money that was fundraised to Haiti, because I believed that I didn't need to go to Russia to train, but people in Haiti deserved houses, food, clothing, more importantly. And when I gave the money away, it's 2 weeks later when O2 called me and said, we like that project you did called I Dance 4. We'd like to fundraise and give you money so you can start your own.
Doing that, yeah.
And I found it so interesting, because then when I looked around the people that you guys then sponsored. So for example, there was Anne-Marie. I just want to show you guys Anne-Marie. So Anne-Marie was part of Britain's, do you remember Anne?
Yes, yes.
She was she's probably Europe's smartest girl. And she's now the Chancellor of Glasgow University at the age of 31 or something. And she was actually the countdown, then she took over Voldemort.
From Carol Vorderman.
Yeah, she did. And it's just interesting that she just wanted to reach women, to teach them that they can be important in STEM. So, and to me, it's so different to me who wanted to be a dancer, but she wanted to teach people, women, how you can get into science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And then my own attributes then influenced another young man called Brighton. So Brighton lives in Zambia. And Brighton reached out to me and was like, I want to start a hub where we can then influence other young people. And that's how he met Prince Harry and Obama, because Obama saw what he did with radio, because he reached out to young people and through his radio station influenced a whole bunch of people. To him, it wasn't about the money, it was about getting the message across. So what he just said now, I think strikes a chord in the fact that it's not about you. It's about creating communities, it's about sharing the message. So on that note, I've got a question regarding building communities. These are big schools that we have here. What advice would you give anyone that's going into the later life, whether it's university, college, sixth form? How should they conduct themselves when it comes to building communities and friends?
So again, complicated question, but a couple of thoughts I would offer you is, we talked a little bit before about it's not always what you do, it's what you make happen. To be successful, in most cases, it's about not just being successful in your right, but building a successful team. So one of the things I would say is build relationships where you can be your best self. Create the conditions of trust, that allow you to express yourself. Because then what will happen is naturally you will expose yourself to the people that can have the most influence and impact on you. And you can be your best by virtue of the contribution you make to them and the way they complement you. And that doesn't have to wait until you're on the football team or the rugby team or whatever. You can start everywhere. Some of my closest friends are people that I started school with when I changed from one school to another when I was at the age of 11. And we understood that we were going through a journey where everybody else in the school knew each other and we were the new kids in the block. But by being authentic at that time and acknowledging the fact that anxious, nervous, insecure because of the circumstances we built relationships and we built an enduring bond with each other. So what I would say is authenticity is at the heart of everything that you will do. So as you go through these major life changes, just being yourself and understanding how you can do that in a way that's both honest but also respectful to the people around you will create the environment in which those steps that seem so huge now and are huge will be real steps forward that you will be proud to look back on.
Amazing. And I've only got one more question left. But if you guys can also think of questions, we'll do a quick Q&A. And I think first one, obviously, want to start with Hendro. But I see this thing staring at me the whole time. And is that the Olympic torch?
So, when Raymond and I were talking, we said, bring something interesting, which clearly wasn't me. So I said, I'll bring something. So this, and I'm very happy for us to pass it round, as long as I get it back on the way back is. So how many people have actually seen one of these in real life? Anyone? One. Two. So this is the Olympic torch that I had the privilege of running with, carrying, lighting in London. I was just before David Beckham. He got it on the TV and on going down the river. But I personally, and this is the torch that I carried in the relay to the Olympic Stadium. And the reason I was invited to carry was in relation to work I was doing for youth charity, for youth employment and youth engagement at the time. As I mentioned earlier, we had gone through a period of incredible youth unemployment, and O2 had been identified as a company that had really made a difference at that time. So the privilege for me to carry this was to represent 15,000 people who worked in our organization and who rallied together to that marathon, which was to make a difference for young people. So it's very special. You can't use it as a barbecue lighter anymore because they break the flame when it's finished. But it is the actual torch that carried the actual Olympic flame that lit the cauldron in London and that had been taken a few weeks earlier from Mount Olympus. So while we finish up, why don't I hand it over and people can pass it around and have a look. There we go. Don't hit anyone with it.
All right. Well, while that gets passed around, could we start the Q&A with possibly Hendra, who's on the...
He was practicing beforehand.
Yeah, he was. He's on the England pathway for the rugby team.
Hendra's just disappointed that as the chairman of Six Nations, I don't get to pick the teams. Otherwise, he thought he was in.
Oh, no. Right. Hi, Ronan. Yeah, so we've already spoken before, haven't we? Just got to go through a few questions, just general stuff. So for a lot of people here, we're going through sixth form, going through all that sort of stuff. What qualifications do you have backing you? Like what O levels, A levels, GCSEs? What's?
So really good question. So I don't have a university degree. And sometimes we all get persuaded that there's only certain routes and only certain things, and therefore you're constrained by the system. And while it can be challenging, I think what I would always say to you, if you understand that question I keep coming back to, the who are you question, there's always a path for people to match their talent to opportunity. So the year I did the equivalent of A levels back home in Dublin, we call it the Leaving Cert. It's very close to Scottish hires, if any of you have Scottish family. The examiners went on strike, so the universities couldn't open for the freshers because nobody knew what their results were. And so I was sitting at home like everybody else was. Any year in Ireland, about 38,000 people, I think, do the Leaving Cert. So I'm sitting at home waiting, and I got approached, and this is where sometimes opportunity comes and meets you. And the chairman of one of the accountancy firms was the president of the Past Pupils Union in my school. And he reached out to the dean of the sixth form and said, if you've got 4 kids who are waiting for their results, and you'll essentially vouch for them that they have the academic basic standard to do a commerce or accounting qualification in university, we'll give them training contracts. So I qualified as a chartered accountant, which absolutely you can do going through university, but I did a 5-year training contract rather than a 3-year contract because I came directly in from school. And I'll let you into a secret. It's about 35 years since anyone asked me what I did at college.
Is there any more questions? Do you have one more, and then we pass to the Auckland student?
Sorry. So you've gone from O2 to Verizon to the Six Nations. How is that? Where's that love for sport come? Where's that link between the three come? What's happened there?
Forgive me walking around, and I do want people, please, if there are questions, do ask. You all got the 6 Lessons of Leadership article, and there should be some things in there that should resonate, even if not all of them, some for all of you. Look, the thing about my career is genuinely, I'm a 15-year-old curious kid. I'm still fascinated by everything. I genuinely don't believe in specialism. Maybe at 9 and maybe at hooker, but outside of, no, seriously, I don't. I think we all have skills, and I think sometimes we get put in boxes that our skills only allow us to do a certain thing. Well, the reality is, the real liberation is to recognize that what you do has other applications. So if I take the sports example, and I'm going to use big numbers just because of context, not for bragging rights. So Verizon has more than 100 million consumer customers. That's about the audience for rugby globally, right? I used to invest, as the leader of that business, about $4 billion a year in sports and other sponsorships with the NFL and others. So the logic of someone like myself being the chairman of Six Nations Rugby is, I'm used to creating experiences for 100 million people that they truly value, and I'm used to the commercial arrangements associated with sponsorship, with rights, and with other things. So although it may not be obvious, the truth is that when you have a core set of skills, the set of opportunities you have to deploy those skills is vastly greater than any career guidance teacher will ever tell you in school, or your parents will tell you. I mean, respectfully, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Most of you have analog parents, and you're digital young people. The jobs that we used to employ for in O2 and Verizon, honestly, the job titles simply didn't exist when the parents of the people who were in those jobs were at school themselves. So the pace of change, and I think the privilege of being at a school like this, if I may be so bold, is giving you the understanding of the broader context, and that the skills you have, you will have much more opportunity to deploy those skills in a much wider range of situations than most people realize. And that actually will probably be, for the first 10 years of your career, will be your secret advantage, that you understand that and you get it. I trained as an accountant. I went straight to the city in London to work in banking. Why? Because money makes everything work. Without money, almost nothing works. And I see myself as an accountant as like an engineer, just not quite as bright. I can see how things work. I see the ecosystem. And if you understand how the money system works and you understand how the business system works, you're 90% of the way to understanding how just about everything works. So think about your skill set, think about your training as not putting you into one channel, but actually liberating you to be the success you deserve to be. Any other questions before we wrap
Auckland
it up?
College,
Don't be shy.
Any questions from Auckland
Don't be shy.
students?
Yes, please, on the end here. Say again? The challenges I had to face. Irish and have a funny accent, and I'm not joking about that. When I first came to London, you guys are too young to remember, but there were still IRA bombings in the city of London. So I arrived to work with a very strong Irish accent, and people didn't know whether to trust me. People didn't know whether to employ me. Sincerely, so that was a real issue when I first came. I think the other thing is, you know, for a period of time, I'm a generalist, not a specialist. And sometimes people think, oh, I need exactly this. And so once or twice I've had to persuade people that I have the relevant skills. But it's remarkable how good a cure hard work is. Because I'll be honest and say, in almost every job I've ever done, in every company I've ever worked for, I've worked harder than anybody else around me. And that compensates for a lot. Other questions? Yes, just here. Say again? What are my unique talents? You guys may not agree after this but storytelling is. So inside organizations, no matter what, businesses, schools, everything, everybody hears differently and everybody has a different context. The ability to walk into a boardroom and persuade people to spend $60 billion on buying new spectrum to start the 5G service in Verizon, and also be able to walk into a call center with 2,000 people who are answering the phone and have a conversation with them as to why on earth it would be important to customers for us to have that new technology. So I would honestly say that storytelling is mine. And the other thing I would say to you is I'm a much better listener than people assume I am. And listening is a secret talent. If you're not a good listener, learn to be a good listener, because the impact you can have by playing back to somebody something that they said in a different time, in a different place, develops a level of credibility for you that is quite remarkable. I'm going to take one here, and then there's a few over there. Yes? Say again? Place to work at, McDonald's. I'm not joking when I say that. I absolutely loved it. It was my first time, my first job. I smelt of onions for about a month because, you know, what I did. But the friendships, there's still people I know from there. The fun of being part of a team, learning new things. And I actually honestly believe that what I learned at 16 is what made me a good team player for the rest of my career. So it's not a flippant answer. The thing I'm probably most proud of in my work experience is the first time becoming a CEO and leading O2, because, and Raymond will tell you, but I could give you 1,000 people who would sign an affidavit tomorrow to say O2 was the best thing they ever did in their careers. And that was because we made it fun and we made a difference. We did things that were the right thing to do, and we delivered better outcomes for young people and others than anybody else in the business at the time. So I'm going to come to the end of the row here. Gentleman with the blonder hair. Yes. Non-executive director. So at Marks and Spencer, so any big public company, you have two types of directors. You have the people who work in the business every single day, and then you've got the non-executives, and we're people who, in theory, have kind of wider expertise because we've worked in other industries or other sectors. So Stuart Machin is the CEO at Marks and Spencer's. So we have board meetings every month, and so I can give Stuart insight on things like customer experience. I can give him insight on what happened in America when I was working there, that sort of thing. So every good company has some executive directors and some non-execs who bring the kind of outside in, if that makes sense. All righty. I'm going, where was I going next?
Far right, yeah.
Two in the middle here. Yeah. Best experience in my career. watching the Lions play against South Africa in the Loftus Versfeld about 18 years ago, probably. I'm a sports nut, so that was probably my most enjoyable thing I've ever done. Apart from my wedding, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm in trouble, hold on. And from a work point of view, I think us building a place in Hoxton, which was for the Think Big program, where we actually created a reality of what we believed we were as O2 and the Think Big program. So when we opened Hoxton, that was amazing.
The young people designed that building.
Yeah. It was crazy. I'm going to go, I haven't been cheating, so I'm going to go over here. Well, I am an accountant, and if any of you have any interest in finance and studies and whatever else is, honestly, understanding how things work is an amazing thing to have a grasp of. So I'm a curious kid. I remember absolutely everything that people tell me. Not always matching names and faces, that's old age, but honestly, I just remember. And quality of listening improves the quality of remembering. So if you're not good at remembering things, test whether or not you're as good a listener as you claim to be. Yes? I think, honestly, most people learn afterwards, and we get good at telling the story when we reflect back. It took me a long time to realize that my talent is that I'm a curious kid, and then I'm good at telling stories around it. But the truth is, I have behaved that way all along. So if you asked people who knew me when I was 15, they would say that that's exactly the way Ronan was back then. And honestly, curiosity is a superpower. Because when you're curious, you learn. And when you stop being curious, you stop learning. And when you stop learning, you're on the way to down there. No, the ground. Honestly, when people stop learning and stop being curious is when they start to age and die. And there's tons of medical evidence to say that's the case as well. Anyone in the lights at the back, just in case I'm missing? I'm going to go over there. I'm going to come around this way. Yeah. How are we supposed to say? Innovate? Oh, it's not the trick question you thought it was. When you're influenced about what's around you, that's called insight. Marketing companies spend billions every year gathering insight. And what you find is that you're seeing most of the picture, and innovation is the people who realize that there's a piece missing in the picture. It's a bit like buying a 200-piece jigsaw and finding there's only 195 pieces in it when you get it home. When you have the 195 pieces, you have a pretty good idea where the gaps in the picture are. So innovation generally comes from observation and insight of what's going on around you. And I've just joined a company as chairman in what's called fintech, so financial technology, and it's helping to create platforms for businesses who are already selling loads of products to do it in a way that's just more regulatory compliant and friendly. So there's a good example of you have all the insights, you have all the information. It looks like it's all been done, but actually it can be done better by looking at the problem slightly differently. So there'll always be space for innovation and space for people to become, billionaires running their own business. I'll take this one here, please.
And then one more after that.
Okay. How many holidays did I have? I've actually always been pretty good at that because some people just can't switch off. I'm pretty good. I sleep like a baby every night. So what I tend to do is, again, conscious of and respectful of the time, the best way, in my experience, to live your life is always be you and just you, because it's exhausting trying to be someone else. And what I found with the people who never take holidays, who never do, who are always, working hard is fun if you're doing the right thing in an area that you're passionate and excited about. But the people I've seen who've had real burnout in their careers are people who try to be someone different in the workplace than they are at home. I've always been, so my wife's also trained as a chartered accountant, so she understands some of the pressures that I've been under at work at different times. But we've always taken our holidays, and this is an old person's comment, but it's a secret, is that as you get older, you have to go on nicer and nicer holidays, otherwise your kids won't come with you.
And yeah, I just want to say, first of all, if we round of applause to Ronan for coming over. I just want to say thank you for coming all this way from London to be here with us, especially Scarisbrick Hall students and Auckland College students. I hope everybody had a lovely time. Did you guys have a good time? Good. And I think for me, the takeaways for you guys are the importance of values, the importance of being leaders. And also, if you guys want to go home, ask yourself a question. And I learned this from O2. Are you a leader or are you a manager? Ask yourself that when you get home. Thank you.
And an honest shout out, and I'm not expecting all of you to do it, to be fair, is, but if there's a question that didn't get answered today and you have a question, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just say that it's from today in Scarisbrick. Otherwise, you know, the chances are I won't recognize who the person is. But I'm always happy to follow up. Just understand that it won't be by 8 p.m. this evening, but I promise I have 350,000 people who follow me on LinkedIn, and I've answered every single question I've ever been asked on that platform.
Yeah,
so you don't need to, but if there's a burning question, the privilege I have in life is that having had the benefit of other people's time, I will always, always, always commit my time in return.
I think what we're going to do with the marketing team is give away golden tickets, which will allow you guys to send the questions to us.
Perfect, and you can channel them and whatever, magic.
You'll get a book which we'll give to Ronan, which is the history of the school book. So inside there will be a golden ticket, and then you'll be able to get your mentorship from Ronan. But once...
And last thing is, if there was nothing in the article, 6 Lessons of Leadership, that resonated with you, read it again.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect.